Hey everyone, I'm Amy,
And I'm
and
Sarah.
together, once again, we're unscripted. So today we've got a much shorter podcast, but we're going to be talking about creepier things. So on today's list, we've got skinwalkers, wendigos, and then the classic mimics. But the way we're going to do it is I'm going to be talking about, I guess, the popular theories behind like what they are and like what we've kind of heard, run of the mill kind of stories. And then Sarah, she's actually done some research. So she's going to kind of,
Little bit of research. Only a little bit of research. I got a few little fun facts about all three of them. So it should be a very interesting podcast. And I'm sure that they're all going to enjoy this podcast. What do you
yeah,
think?
and we are going to include a couple of personal experiences that we've had with a couple of these. So I don't know. Might be interesting. We'll see. You'll let us know. But so for the first topic of skinwalkers, I know some people are probably cringing because that's like a word that
Mhm.
a lot of people are paranoid to speak about. A lot of the other like YouTubers that I hear, they don't like to use that term. They call them either flesh pedestrians or they'll call them, just SW, just kind of abbreviate it. Um, I'm not superstitious like that. I'm not sure if I should be, but what I heard, what they were, um, was it was based heavily in the Navajo Indian tradition, like their beliefs, things that they have seen. And it's weird. I've heard one that they could either only attack people of the Navajo heritage. And then I've also heard on the flip side that they can come after anybody. It's just the Navajo that are the ones that are the like on their reservations. They're the ones who are like hush hush hush. Like they don't want you to talk about it. They don't want to speak their name. Um, But you tell me what you found out about that.
Okay. So a skinwalker is a type of witch in Navajo mythology that can transform into animals, possess them, or disguise themselves as them. So that's the traditional um definition of a skinwalker. So they are said to have like supernatural abilities such as increased speed, mimicry, and mind control, which is crazy. So could you imagine something like trying to take over your brain, and making you do things that you wouldn't normally do? But the term skinwalker is never used to describe healers. So it's like a type of witch. You won't call a medicine woman or medicine man a skinwalker, even though they do a bunch of like, you know, hocus pocus, magic, things like that. They're technically medicine witches, but you would never call them like a skinwalker. Um, so skinwalkers are said to exhibit stronger and or stranger and unusual behaviors. So they move in an unsettling, you know, natural way. So, with that being said, they are mostly in the southwestern U.S. and around the New Mexico and Arizona locations. So, some Navajos believe that the skinwalkers have the ability to steal the face of the person, and some believe that if you ever look in their eyes with a skinwalker, they can absorb themselves into a person's body, or that one's body might freeze up with fear, allowing the skinwalker to channel that fear to gain power and energy. So skinwalker is all about power and energy. Now, the myth goes that skinwalkers were like a Navajo Indian or
That's what I was gonna say.
somebody who went
That's
bad.
what I was gonna say. I remember when
Yeah.
you mentioned witch
Mhm.
that I had read a story where
Mhm.
there was like a medicine man or medicine woman and they
They
yeah,
went bad.
they wanted to do something. I forgot, the specifics, but they wanted to do something that benefited them and not the general people. And I don't
Mhm.
know if like they poisoned people, but like you said, they went bad. And that's how like the legend
Mhm.
started because somebody found out about that, like a chief, or and they put like some kind of and like a
Like a
curse on
curse
them, and
type
it
thing
turned
on
them
them.
into something they could identify. I don't know.
Mhm. But they also say that with the them going bad, they have also increased, like they would perform human
Um,
sacrifices or animal
oh,
sacrifices
no.
in order to gain power and
Yeah.
strength, and that would almost like mutate them into the skinwalker, and they would actually eat human and animal flesh. So they're like cannibals. They've become cannibals. Now, a cool fun fact I've got to mention to you guys is, how do you tell if someone is a skinwalker? Do you have any idea how you would be able to tell?
I mean, other than like the unnatural movements or some of the things that I've heard, no.
Mhm. Yeah. Uh-huh. So along with the abilities of the animals they wear, the easiest way to tell something someone is a skinwalker is by looking at their eyes. So while they are in human form, their eyes will take on a more animalistic
Hmm.
look. And when they're in animal form, they have a more human
You would think
eye
they would
look.
flip that
So
to be better described.
right, but that's how you know it's an actual
Is that part
skinwalker,
of the curse?
because, for example, if you see a
Is
skinwalker,
that
I'm
part of the
sorry?
curse? They can't fully like hide.
Mhm. Fully transform, I have no
Hmm.
idea. But I know that when they're in human form, they have the animalistic eyes. So instead of, how humans have the whites and then they have the colored irises and the pupils, um, a bear doesn't have that. A bear has all black in their eyes, right?
No.
And you can't really see pupils or anything. But when a skinwalker is in a human form, if you look at their eyes, you could see, that they're not natural eyes. And then when they're in animal form, you look and you can see more humanistic eyes. So you'll see the whites, you'll see, the irises, you'll see all of the pupils. You'll be able to see that when they're in animal form. A lot of like does, you know how the does have the big, beautiful
Yeah.
little eyes? Um, you would in the animal form they would have like a big doe eye but more humanistic. So that's my fun fact about skinwalkers today. I thought it would be really cool, so to explain
Well,
all
here's
that.
the thing about
um
skinwalkers too that I've heard. I always heard
mhm,
that when they turn into like I've always heard that not the cannibalistic part, but just you'll see a wolf staring at you from behind some bushes or on top of a hill, and then you'll turn
mhm,
back to look at it, and then you see a person maybe crouched down instead. So it's like it's always been like
mhm,
that quick, weird, transformation. But then the stories that I've heard
mhm,
about people who claim that they've actually seen a skinwalker, what would happen is they'll see somebody like with clothes on, which is weird to me because it's like you would think if
mhm,
you transformed from like a wolf to, some guy that, just seems to be standing kind of strange, he wouldn't be wearing clothes
mhm.
because you wouldn't see that polo on the wolf. So like where the heck did the
Well, I
clothes come from?
I agree with that, but you're thinking more. I mean, what I'm understanding is you're sounding more and more like a werewolf creature. Werewolves would have no clothes. They could transform to human, they would come out with no clothes on. But a skinwalker is a medicine man woman who went
Right.
bad. So technically, it's more of like they like to play tricks in the
Yeah,
eyes of
illusion.
people. They want people to believe and, say, okay, well, I see an animal, now I see a human. They want that uncertainty. So they want to scare you with the uncertainty.
Gotcha.
Um,
Okay.
so let me see, what else can I mention about them? Oh, how do you kill a skinwalker?
Oh, you know what? I know this, but I can't remember because I'm under pressure, and that's how that works. Um, yeah, so just tell me. I'm not even gonna try to venture again.
Okay. Okay. So, they always, they started to claim that just, silver bullets through the heart,
I was
like a
gonna say.
werewolf, would kill them. However, mythology and lore states that it needs to be a bullet dipped in white ash.
Really?
So white ash, a bullet in dipped in white ash can actually go through the heart, and it is said to kill them. So they claim. I don't personally want to get close to an animal to see, eyes change, or where I need to use an ash, white ash bullet. That would kind of frighten me. So I don't know if there's any stories about people who had a face down
There
with these
are.
creatures.
There
I
are.
don't
I've
think
heard about
so.
them, but I didn't hear that they used white ash. I heard it was something else, maybe like a
Mhm.
spear. I don't know.
Mm. Well, the spear also, they could use a spear, but it has to be dipped in white ash because white ash is supposedly magical and it can absorb that. negativity or that, menace, the negative energies that they
So then
show
hang on a
off.
second. What
So that's
happens if somebody is looking at like a wolf or some kind of a creature and they suspect they're like, no, this isn't, a normal creature, it's a skinwalker, and they use like a spear or the white ash bullet and that they kill it. Like what happens? Does it turn
uh
into a person?
I it would my opinion is it would probably turn into like maybe a person, but like, or it could be just a pile of white ash because all that the skinwalkers were doing were people who, devoured human sacrifices or animal sacrifices. And, that's pure
Yeah.
evil. So if you're going to be, speared with a white tip, white ash tip of a spear or a white ash dipped bullet, I mean, they would, my own opinion, I believe that they would probably just disintegrate into like a pile of white
Yeah.
ash because that should absorb the whole, negative
Kind
energy
of makes
thing.
you think of
So
vampires and
that's, I mean,
sunlight.
it really, yeah, I was thinking, or the UV light
Yeah,
bullets, that
I
would
know.
be great, like you seen in
Yeah,
Underworld.
very good.
So,
Okay.
so let me see if there's anything else. Okay, so what the Navajo Indians call the skinwalker, because they won't use the term
That's right. Yeah.
skinwalker, is they call it, it's called Yi Nal Delushi. I don't know if
Forgive
I'm
the
pronouncing that right.
pronunciation.
Forgive me. I forgive my pronunciation, but the name means by means of it, it goes on all
Yeah, it's
fours.
creepy.
So the skinwalkers will be crawling on all fours. So they have that unnatural, weird
Mhm.
behavior that that people come to put together with that skinwalker thing.
Gotcha.
So they would, and they have existed within Native American culture for thousands of years. Okay, but it's only in recent times that the phenomena has grown in popularity around the world, due to the reports coming out of like Skinwalker Ranch. So
Yeah.
the show Skinwalker Ranch is the first that's really like explored the idea of
I forgot all
skinwalkers
about that.
and
Yeah.
having them on their.
I forgot all
Huh?
about that show.
What'd you say? Skinwalker Ranch is a great show. I watch it a lot. I like to watch it on the Travel Channel, but they talk about
I was gonna say, I
UFOs and
remember
aliens and skinwalkers.
alien-based stories coming out of that,
hmm
which is
They
intriguing.
talk about hellhounds. Like they claim that the hellhounds and were coming after their animals. So Skinwalker Ranch is a great show, and I do recommend who hasn't seen it to check it out because I think you guys would really be interested in what they have to say, and it's really intriguing, some of the facts that they use, and some of their evidence is absolutely
I thought
shocking.
for a while though that
So
they weren't
definitely.
letting certain people in. Like they had to stop airing episodes because either there was like a new ownership or the government got involved and they wouldn't let people do any more research.
The
Talking
government
stuff.
came in, stepped in, and told them that they need to, either quit doing their shows or, change up your topics, something like that, because I think they're hitting too close on what's actually
Mhm.
going on in the world
Yeah.
today. So I believe that that's what's going on. So the last thing I have here is the other abilities skinwalkers have are reading minds. They can control animals. They what is it? The animals, they can call up spirits of the dead, inflict pain, and they can also promote mimicry. So mimicry as
Yeah,
in
that
they
makes
can
sense.
make noises that sound similar to people or like children and goats, like baby goats, how they almost sound like little
Yeah.
kids when they're
Mhm.
crying. So skinwalkers can create that mimicry
That
as
makes sense.
well. So that's all I found out so far about
'Cause you know what? There's
skinwalkers.
been some stories that I've heard where they'll talk
Mhm.
about they thought that they saw something unnatural, potentially a skinwalker outside, and they hurry up, they grab their dogs, they go inside, and that when either there's like a knock at the door or some kind of scratching or something, a vocalization, and their dogs won't react like they would if, the mailman, showed up. And it's like they're wondering, well,
Mhm.
why the heck is my dog not reacting? And that goes into the whole mind control, subduing animals so that way kind of keeps them out of their way so that way they can come after their real target. So, That's creepy. Yeah.
Exactly. I completely agree with that. When I read about how they can control animals, that made really good
Yeah.
sense to me. Why would they not, act up? Why wouldn't you hear them barking or growling or anything like that? But, that makes a lot of sense because, they take over animals, they focus on you, they can even mimic people. So the dogs might be confused. They might think that, hey, this sounds just like my owner,. It's not my owner.
Like that.
So yeah. So that's all I got on
Okay, so
skinwalkers.
then that brings us to Wendigos. Now, I don't, you're excited. I have never been too informative, I guess, on Wendigos. I've seen maybe a few, shows based on them, but all the information that, like, again, she's got the info. I'm just going off of like, through the grapevine type of stuff. So for Wendigos, I heard that it was based in like mountainous areas, and that was because like some of the first reports came from people who would like travel up the mountain like in horse and carriage, and then like their family would be, waiting for them to come back with whatever food supplies they had for the winter and their log cabins, and they had to wait, and sometimes, their whoever, their spouse or whatever family member wouldn't come back, or if they did, they came back and they were very skinny, they were very sickly looking, something was off, and then after that they started noticing, hey, this isn't who left. Who came back is not who left. Like, what is this? And so I've always heard that they
Mhm.
become cannibalistic, and they have like an insatiable hunger. It's just no matter how much they
Mhm.
eat, they never put on any weight, they never look any healthier, and they just keep deteriorating.
Almost sounds like a
Yeah,
parasitic
exactly.
relationship.
So what is a Wendigo?
Okay. Well, you are not wrong. That is very similar, and according to Wendigo folklore, yes, they are like parasitic type beings. So Wendigo, the actual definition is, Wendigos are mythological creatures, forgive me, or evil spirits originating from the Algonquin folklore. So Algonquin
Okay.
Indians. The concept of the Wendigo has been widely used in literature and other works of art, such as social commentary and horror fiction. So, a mythological cannibalistic monster is what they would call it. The spiritual tradition of North American Algonquins speaking tribes. So, the Algonquin tribes that's how they identify it, is it's a cannibalistic monster. So, they can possess humans, which can then turn those humans into cannibals as well, which is what you were talking
Mhm.
about. So these humans start to feel like they start to crave human flesh. If a Wendigo gets them, it can possess them and they crave human flesh, which can also lead to why they look so emaciated because they're not getting proper nutrition, protein, because they're eating other people. Um, so the location of the Wendigos is between like in the Minnesota North Woods, forests of the Great Lake region, and central regions of Canada. Normally in that area, it's more like a mountainous, type area. However, from personal experience, I know someone who actually saw one in West Virginia where I used to live. So I'll get to that in just a moment. So I don't believe that they just stay in those areas. I think they can pretty much go anywhere there's mountains. So reported sightings have been included in like native reports. Uh, Descriptions are usually very like different. They can vary in descriptions. So often it depicts tall, emaciated figures with gaunt features, pale skin, and glowing eyes. That's what a Wendigo would look like according to Indian tradition and
Right.
folklore. So reports emphasize that the creature's immense size, strength, and predatory nature links it to the disappearances and misfortune of those who cross its
Right.
path. So, go ahead.
I
What were
was
you going
going
to
to
say?
say, so that kind of goes back to the origin of it, is it's a dark, hungry spirit that resides in mountainous regions or like heavily wooded areas that are more remote that way,
Mhm.
so when they come across
Mhm.
people, what attracts, is there anything in
Mhm.
legend that says like what attracts Wendigos to certain people to possess them?
Yeah. Yes, actually, so they have said that when you see a Wendigo or you will feel a Wendigo when it's near. So it makes you feel cold, it makes you feel
Hmm.
dread,
Yeah,
despair,
that's right.
hopelessness. So it's like this. It's yeah, it's like this whole feeling of there's something going on. I don't know what it
Yeah.
is, and you feel scared, terrified. So it is technically the cultural significance is a cautionary tale with the Algonquin communities, and it warns against people who are greedy, selfish, and have moral transgressions. So it likes to aim for people who are not nice as humans, who have, darker tendencies. So the Wendigos are more attracted to negative people, negative attributes in
Support
humans.
characters, pretty much.
So,
Support
huh?
characters, pretty much.
Right, because then they can feed off of that human
And negative.
energy and it makes themselves stronger, more powerful, things like
Gotcha.
that. So, some of the interpretations and beliefs surrounding the Wendigo can influence how individuals perceive and intercept sightings or unusual experiences. Now, with that in mind, there is some scientific skepticism, which I'm sure you probably understand this really well.
Me
So,
being the
from a
skeptic.
scientific, well, not the skeptic, you are the
Yeah,
wannabe
I
believer,
know.
remember? So, you're not quite skeptic, you've got the open
Yeah.
mindedness, okay? So, scientific skepticism from that standpoint, their reported sightings, they lack physical evidence. There's not, Wendigos caught on camera. They can, they defy biological
Yeah.
principles. So it doesn't really make sense in the scientific community how these creatures can just come
Yeah.
to be. So how do you make something that's manifested or from a thought to physical
Right.
reality? So they can't find out how that will work. But I do have another fun fact. Um, the first report of Wendigos, it was started in
You was a long
1636,
time ago.
and it was by yeah, so 1636, and it was by a reporter named well, he was a French Jesuit missionary. His name was Paul
Hmm.
Lejeune, and he wrote down this encounter from an Algonquin people in Quebec, Canada.
Oh, yeah.
So that's my fun
Yeah.
fact. That's my fun fact on Wendigos. There is a Spotify episode called Wendigos Found in the Nature Preserve in West
Um,
Virginia. So that's another proof that it was in West Virginia. It's episode 119 on YouTube channel. The name of the YouTube channel is called Darkness Prevails.
I like
So
him.
there
I like
was a
him.
Wendigo found.
I listen to him all the
What?
time. He's a
Yep.
fool. Cool.
So Wendigos have been found in the nature preserve in West Virginia. So my son has also seen this from my own balcony when I lived in the weird, like Gully Bridge of West Virginia. So we were actually, he was terrified, but he saw one by my little goat pen we had. They were trying to eat my goats. So it was very, very interesting. But I'm gonna save that story for another day. So
Was that the only one? Didn't you have another one?
for the Wendigo, no,
Yeah.
not
Okay.
no, the Wendigo. I mean, there was only tales of the Wendigo with us. The only one that actually was substantiated was the one that my son was that he saw when he was, I want to say, 19 or 18 years old. But he was the one who was sitting on my porch and he saw this white, skinny, tall creature, he claimed, that had like huge like biceps. It was walking on 2 feet instead of four. It was growling and it was like stalking my goat pen because we had 4 goats in a little pen and it was stalking that. My son got freaked out because he said that it looked right at him and it had these glowing yellow eyes and he claimed it bore a hole through his soul, is what my son said. He came in, he locked the door, and then I was up the next few hours and he was literally in tears saying he had saw this creature and he was afraid it was going to come after us. So
Yeah.
that's pretty much the story in a nutshell, what happened to us. So
Creepy, creepy. Well, then that brings us to our last topic of mimics.
Mhm.
So, again, what I know about mimics are they are demonic in nature,
Mhm.
and they tend to be a spirit that it goes far beyond um just like a malevolent kind of spirit. The spirit, from what I've read anyway,
Mhm.
it likes to obviously, pretend it's other people, but it does that so that way it can like draw you in closer for possession.
Right.
So, but, I mean, this is all speculation. There's, multiple stories that I've heard, you know, online and, paranormal
Mhm.
episodes and whatever. But as far as I'm concerned, I've always heard that a mimic is and can only be demonic. And
Mhm.
they're they're either they're either trying to lure people in to their
Mhm.
demise. So
Mhm.
like when you're at home and like you think you hear your mom come home and she yells for you and you go downstairs and she's not there, or
Mhm.
like
You hear your
that.
best friend's
Basically,
voice.
yeah, exactly. We'll get into that. But I think isn't that the story, the creepypasta story where it's like I heard it too?
Mhm.
With
Yeah.
mom, and she
Yeah.
hurries up. Yeah, that's woo, creepy, gives me chills every time. So, I don't really know much about mimics other than what I've heard, because if you look it up, the first thing that you see is, people, like mimicry, like the art
Right.
of imitating. It's like, that is not what I'm looking for, sir. Like,
Mhm.
so what do you know about mimics, or what have you come across?
Well, I've actually personally have dealt with mimics, but again, that'll be on our paranormal series. We can go
Well,
into that. It's a pretty long story.
yeah.
But definition of paranormal mimics is a ghostly entity that has the ability to imitate the voices, appearances, or behavior of living people, often with the goal of manipulating or frightening those they target. So they do it on purpose to scare you and to draw you in, like you said. So, a couple of little facts I have about them are they often mimic loved ones to gain your trust. They can use detailed memories. Now, this was interesting. They can use detailed memories of a person's life to sound convincing, sometimes associated with demonic entities, and are considered particularly tricky to identify due to their deceptive nature. So, in paranormal lore, the ability to mimic is often seen as a sign of a powerful, malicious spirit. Again, that goes in with what you've learned. And
Mhm,
some key points about paranormal mimics, I just want to quickly touch on them. They
mhm.
most often imitate, forgive me, imitate deceased loved ones to gain trust and manipulate victims' emotional states. They have access. Now, this is cool. This is a really cool little fun fact. They have access and are able to utilize detailed memories about a person's life, allowing them to mimic mannerisms, voice inflections, and even inside jokes with uncanny accuracy. So that was kind of creepy reading that. And paranormal lore also portrays them as malicious entities aiming to frighten or manipulate individuals. But some people suggest that mimics may just be confused spirits trying to connect with the last thing they remember of their human life, if they were actually ever human. So they can
Um,
sometimes, go ahead, what?
no, go on.
Okay. So mimics in some traditions are considered a type of demon associated with the ability to shapeshift and impersonate others. So recognizing a mimic can be very challenging as they mimic people so well, which makes it hard to decipher the deception unless you are very observant or skeptic yourself. So if you feel like, hey, this doesn't seem like something he would say or she would say, and
Yeah.
unless you're very skeptical and very observant, it's going to be near impossible to determine what this thing is. So they're also known as doppelgangers, which is something that we're going to be talking about soon. So they're also
Mhm.
mimics are also known as doppelgangers. They are supernatural entities deeply rooted in folklore and mythology from various different cultures. So that's all I got on mimics.
That's
So
it.
in general, yeah, in general, mimics basically, as you were saying, you were correct in your assumption that they can imitate loved ones. Most of the time, they're associated with demonic possessions, things like that. They also are very hard to figure out, to determine if it's actually a mimic or reality. We don't know. So there's no like, there's tons of videos and things online, YouTube and Spotify that can tell them, hey, this is what it is. So, and there's tons of movies out there.
Yeah.
So,
Well, what I was gonna say is it's unfortunate, like, obviously in this day and age with social media, um, you know, remember how Slender Man, he started off on the
mhm,
Something Awful forums, and it's just it gains traction and it just blows up, and before you know it, there's a
mhm,
movie and people claiming that it's real and he can, you know,
mhm,
that they've seen him and all that.
mhm,
So unfortunately with mimics, it's like again, I want to believe, but there's so many like videos on YouTube or TikTok
mhm,
where people are
mhm.
like, recording themselves talking and then you can hear them talking like in another room and they're like, "Oh my god." It's like if that were happening, you would not be having your cell phone recording, what was
Right.
going on. You would need a new change of pants and you'd be out of that house right away. I mean,
Yeah.
if you got nerves of steel, I don't know what that's like. So that's
Like I said,
unfortunate.
I believe that, I know for a fact that mimics are real because I hear them all the time. I found out like the other day, my daughter was in her room, she was sleeping, but I heard her calling me and I heard her, screaming like she was scared, like something had jumped on her, like I don't know, a spider scared her or something, but she screamed. And so I went into the bedroom, and when I went to the bedroom, she was completely fast asleep. I stayed there for a few minutes because I thought maybe she was having a nightmare. She didn't wake up. And there's been other times where I've heard my husband call me, from the other room, and he's literally sitting right next to me.
Yeah, that's
So
pretty.
no, mimics are absolutely real, and I will defend that until the day I die because I've personally had experiences with them, and I know you and I have had a few experiences similar to that we can talk about in our paranormal pod. So,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Well, I had one and it wasn't. I was gonna talk about it really quick. I don't know if it was actually a mimic.
Mhm,
Um, in fact, I'd have to say it was more just paranormal in general
mhm,
because it was probably, I want to say, a few years ago. I was visiting with my mom and she had been in her room and she was watching something on TV, and then my brother, he was like playing a video game or something, and I was going through something. I don't know. I was trying to gather something up or I don't know what I was doing. But I was in another room and I heard a really deep voice go, "Amy." And I was like, but I mean, it was loud and really deep.
mhm,
And I was like, what? Thinking my brother's, messing with me. And I was like, what? And then
mhm,
I waited and I didn't hear anything. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, whatever. I
mhm,
don't care. Get back to what I'm doing. And then I hear it again, "Amy." But it was like louder. And I was like, oh, fine. And by that point, I'm just annoyed. So I like
mhm,
walk out and I walk down the hall and I go to my brother's room and I'm like, what? And he looked at me and he's like, and I was like, why are you doing that? He's like, what? That thing with your voice. And he's like, I'm not. I was like, you didn't call my name. He was like, no. And as
mhm.
I was to walk away, he goes, but I heard it too. And I was like,
Oh,
what?
see? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying.
So,
That's exactly it. So see, even you know that mimics are real. Ha ha!
well,
I
whatever
love.
the thing was, I mean, it didn't, I thought it was him, even though it didn't sound like him. But
Mhm,
I thought, well, maybe, he's just doing like a trick of his voice or something. So
mhm,
again, we've got a whole topic on our paranormal experiences.
mhm,
It's a pretty wild ride. But
mhm,
last thing I want to say before we get off of here is I think it's kind of difficult. I think that mimics and skinwalkers kind of their terms get interchanged with each other a lot
mhm,
because of the stories where people they talk about how they're going camping and they
mhm,
see something in the woods and that person is calling to them in a loved one's voice. It's with them and it's not that person. And
mhm,
so it's like I don't know if it's a skinwalker.
mhm,
Like it can some of these stories they're not changing into animals, they're like people and they're just
mhm.
standing there at the edge of the wood line, watching them. But then they're uncharacteristic in their movements. And then
Right.
the mimic or a skinwalker, or it's hard to
They can
the lines
they can
blur.
literally go hand in hand, honestly. They can literally go hand in hand. Like, there's a lot of, ways that people could think it's a mimic or a skinwalker. I honestly don't really see too much of a difference except for the mannerisms with the skinwalkers. So, like, if they start walking funny or they get on all fours, you definitely know it's a skinwalker. Whereas a mimic can just, like, kind of, peek out at you. But mimics are more like you hear them, but you don't see them.
Yeah,
Really, you can hear them. The voices are someone you love. It could be that. It's more what I determine as mimics are more like people who things who talk to you, and skinwalkers are things you actually see, and they do weird things with their bodies. So yeah, I think that's like how I would determine between a skinwalker and a mimic.
perfect. All right. Well, the other stuff we'll talk about in one of our paranormal, not our personal stories. I know those are going to be so much fun, but like in just our talks about like paranormal apparitions
Oh
and
yeah,
just
demonic
premonition
possessions, things like
imagery.
that.
Yeah, we've got a whole bunch of stuff. So I've got it written down so that way I know what we're going to talk about. What I want to say anyway in that one. Because we kind of touched on it here, but other than that, very interesting. You did your research, girl, and I'm
I
here for
tried,
it.
and I love that you joined in and told me, what people usually, not just you, like
Mm.
everyone in general feels. And I just wanted to cover just a few little fun facts that I learned. So yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, because I mean, I don't think we're ever going to truly know what they are, but I mean, some
Mhm.
people only they feel like they already know. It's one of those things. Like scientific data is never going to be like, oh yeah, by the way, you were right.
Here's the
Skinwalker did
Yeah,
this. I don't think that's going
exactly.
to happen. So,
Okay.
but yeah, good
All
talk,
right.
good episode.
Sounds great. Until next time,
Until
I'm
next time,
Sarah,
I'm Amy. Keep it creepy.
and we're unscripted.
Bye.
Bye.